A Karen comes into my restaurant that I own and claims that she's the owner's sister and demands free food, so I decided to play along. I'm a 28-year-old male and I run a restaurant in a quiet suburb in Illinois. So this story takes place on a busy Friday night at the restaurant, and I was working the front of the house, making sure everything was running smoothly. As I walked by a table, I overheard one of the customers, a woman, who's the Karen, with blonde hair and a sour look on her face, talking to her friend. "Can you believe the audacity of this place? Charging so much for such mediocre food, I swear. I'm gonna talk to the owner about this," she said, loud enough for everyone within earshot to hear. I gritted my teeth and tried to ignore her, but she continued to complain about everything from the temperature of the water to the amount of salt in her soup. I could tell she was looking for a fight, and I didn't have time to deal with her tonight. Just as I was about to walk away, she called out to me, "Excuse me, young man. I need to speak with the owner of this establishment. It's extremely important," she said, emphasizing each word as if she was trying to intimidate me. I took a deep breath and forced a smile. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but the owner's not available at the moment. Is there something I can help you with?" I asked, hoping she would take the hint and let it go. But she just narrowed her eyes at me and leaned in closer. "Listen, I know the owner of this place. She's my sister, and she's going to be very upset when she finds out about the poor service and subpar food we've received tonight. So unless you want to deal with her wrath, I suggest you bring her to me right now," she said, her voice dripping with entitlement. I knew she was lying, but I didn't have time to argue with her, so I played along, hoping to pacify her and get her out of the restaurant as quickly as possible. "I apologize for the misunderstanding, ma'am. I didn't realize you were the owner's sister. Please let me make it up to you with a complimentary meal on the house," I said, trying to sound sincere. She smiled triumphantly and sat back in her chair. "That's more like it. I'll have the filet mignon, cooked medium rare, with a side of mashed potatoes and asparagus. And bring me a bottle of your best red wine. My sister always spoils me when I come here," she said, grinning like a Cheshire cat. I nodded politely and walked away, already formulating a plan in my head. I knew she was lying about being the owner's sister, and I was determined to expose her for the entitled Karen that she was. I went to the kitchen and explained the situation to my head chef, who quickly prepared the woman's meal and added a few special touches to make it extra special. I also grabbed a bottle of our most expensive red wine and poured her a glass. As I carried the tray of food back to the woman's table, I noticed that she had already finished her first glass of wine and was now chatting with her companion, bragging about how she was getting a free meal because of her connection to the owner. I set the tray down on the table and smiled. "Here you are, ma'am, your filet mignon, mashed potatoes, and asparagus, just as you requested. And here's a glass of our best red wine, on the house," I said, trying to keep my tone neutral. She looked at the plate with a satisfied smile and took a bite of the steak. This is delicious. My sister definitely knows how to take care of me. I'll have to make sure to thank her when I see her next," she said, taking a sip of the wine. I nodded politely and started to walk away, but she called out to me again. "Wait, young man, I have another request. Can you bring me a piece of your famous chocolate cake for dessert? I heard it's to die for," she said, flashing me a smug grin. I felt my patience running thin, but I knew I had to keep up the charade for a little while longer. "Of course, ma'am. I'll have the chef prepare a slice of chocolate cake for you right away. Anything else I can get for you?" I asked, and she shook her head. "No, that's all for now. But make sure to tell the owner how much I appreciate her generosity. She's such a dear sister," she said, giving me a wink that is so devious. I walked away, seething with anger. I couldn't believe this entitled Karen was trying to scam me in my restaurant, pretending to be the owner's sister and demanding free food and drinks, but I wasn't going to let her get away with it. I went back to the kitchen and explained the situation to my staff, who were equally outraged. We all collectively found the situation funny, so we came up with a plan to expose her and make her pay for her actions. When the woman finished her meal and asked for the bill, I approached her table with a fake smile and a piece of paper in my hand. "Ma'am, I have some good news for you. The owner of this restaurant heard about your complimentary meal and wanted to personally thank you. She's offering you a special discount on your bill as a token of her appreciation," I said, holding out the paper. The woman's eyes lit up, and she reached for the paper, eager to see the discount. But as she took it from my hand, she realized it was not a discount at all. It was a bill for the full amount of her meal, plus an additional charge for being disruptive and lying about her relationship to the owner. The annoying Karen's face turned red with anger, and she stood up from her chair, knocking over her glass of wine in the process. I looked at her with a calm and collected expression. "Ma'am, I'm sorry, but you're mistaken. I'm the owner of this restaurant, and I know you're not my sister. You're an entitled Karen who tried to scam me and my staff. And now you have to pay for your actions." I said, reaching for the bill that was still on the table. She was livid. If I could describe her as a fruit, she looked like a strawberry. "This is outrageous! I demand to speak to the owner right now!" she yelled, causing a scene in the restaurant. I leaned in closer to her, still maintaining my composure. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but you're looking at the owner right now, and I'm not going to let you get away with your entitled behavior. Security will escort you out of the restaurant if you don't pay your bill immediately." The woman's face turned pale, and she quickly grabbed her purse, pulling out her credit card and handed it to me. "Fine, I'll pay, but you haven't seen the last of me. I'm going to make sure everyone knows how terrible this place is," she said, giving me a dirty look. I took her credit card and handed it to the cashier, who processed the payment and handed her a receipt. "Thank you for your business, ma'am. I hope you have a nice evening," I said, trying to hide my sarcasm. The woman huffed and stormed out of the restaurant, followed by the security guards to make sure she didn't cause any more trouble. I breathed a sigh of relief, glad that the situation was finally over. But as I looked around the restaurant, I realized that the other customers had witnessed the whole scene. Some were shaking their heads in disbelief, while others were clapping and cheering for me for standing up to this abysmal being of a human. Wow, this story sounds too crazy to be true. That must have been so frustrating for you to deal with that woman at your restaurant. It's outrageous how entitled and rude some people can be, expecting free food by claiming to be related to the owner. That's just some next-level sadness. I'm glad you were able to play along and pacify her, but it's not fair that you had to go through all that just to keep her happy. I hope she doesn't cause any more trouble to any other human on this planet. My brother wanted to propose to his girlfriend at my upcoming wedding. I said no, and all of this craziness happened. Am I the jerk? I am a 27-year-old male, and I'll start this off by saying my wedding is scheduled for April because my fiancé, who's 25, has always dreamed of a spring wedding, and I really like the idea too. I have an older brother, though, who is 30. And last Saturday, I was called over to my parents' house to talk about something, but they refused to tell me what until I got there. They then sat me down with my brother and told me that my brother wants to use my wedding as the perfect day for him to propose to his girlfriend. I was instantly mad and told them absolutely not, but they ganged up on me. I ended up so enraged to the point that I, one man, somehow backed all three of them into a corner. I told them that if they want to do this, then not only will they all be uninvited, but I'll also cut off the financial support I've been giving monthly, since they paid to have my golden child brother go through college by taking out a second mortgage. I landed a decently high-paying job and have been sending $500 to my parents monthly to help ease their mortgage. And I didn't ask for a stake in the ownership of their house either because I really don't want it. It was entirely goodwill, and I can cut it off anytime. I left without speaking anything more to them, but my brother came back to my home the next day to yell at me that I ruined his big chance because now our parents are siding with me and say they'll evict him if he tries to propose at my wedding. He said I was financially blackmailing our parents and that he just wanted a good chance to propose because he was afraid his girlfriend might leave him soon. I said that was his problem, not mine, because my wedding day is not about him. And if he tries to propose at my wedding, I will have him thrown out. That's not a maybe, but a definite. And I doubt his girlfriend would appreciate her proposal followed up with being tossed out by a bouncer. He yelled a few choice words at me, then went crying to our only surviving grandparent, our maternal grandmother, and she called to try and ream me over the phone. No surprise, my brother heavily embellished the version of the story he told her, but she still sided with him after I gave her the real story. She tried to hold her ground, but the verbal backlash I ended up giving her left her crying. That got back to my parents, who were pissed at me for taking things so far. But I told them I only went that far because I had to when they were all trying to get me to let my brother use my wedding as his springboard for a proposal. They ended up agreeing with me, but still stated they feel like I'm crass. And my brother showed up at my home again to scream at me that I'm an asshole. And I hope I'm happy with myself for not allowing him the opportunity. My fiancé knows what my brother tried to do, and she's very angry about it. She almost ready to have him uninvited if he pursues this any further. Normally, I have a very mild temper, but when it comes to certain people like my brother, parents, and grandmother, I can easily get short with them because of all the past favoritism. My grandmother especially. She always sided with my brother and believed his lies no matter what he did. She's the biggest reason my parents favored my brother too. She kept trying to convince me over the phone to let my brother propose at my wedding that I ended up losing it on her. I ended up speaking with my brother again and threatened to tell his girlfriend if he was still intending to propose at my wedding without permission. He took it poorly and called me an awful person. So I pointed out that my wedding isn't about him. Our parents were there for this, and they backed me up. I think my brother did a double take when they did that. My dad pointed out that he'd raised my brother wrong, and that was on him. So from now on, my brother was to show them real respect, and they wanted to get an official lease drawn up for him to pay proper rent and utilities. He was only paying them $300 a month without contributing to any utilities or food. And if he doesn't want to pay, he can move out, and they'll rent his room to someone else. My brother turned to our mom for help, but she just agreed with Dad. He looked like he was having a conniption and then left the house. He came back a couple hours later, but spoke to no one and locked himself in his room. 2 days later, my brother announced he was moving in with Grandma because she invited him. And our parents basically told him that if he wants to live with her, then to go ahead. My brother responded to this by saying we all hate him for just wanting to propose to his girlfriend. My parents pointed out that it's not that he wanted to propose, but where he wanted to do it. And he'd get no support for it. He's refusing to talk to our parents now. My grandmother did try to call me again, but it ended up with me telling her that my brother will not be allowed to propose at my wedding, plain and simple, so he can get over it, or not come. And the same goes for her. I ended up calling her out on her favoritism toward my brother since we were kids, which she tried to deny at first, but couldn't keep doing so because of how much I'd pointed out. She ended up crying again, while I told her that if she keeps trying to insist on this, then she won't be coming to my wedding. She begged me not to rescind her invite, but still said she doesn't understand why I couldn't let my brother have his way before ending the call. My fiancé is 100% on my side, and is fully ready to remove my brother and grandmother from the wedding. My grandmother hasn't called again, and she's not talking to my parents either. My guess is my brother went crying to her again to tell her mommy and daddy weren't enabling him anymore, so she offered for him to move in with her. But there's literally nothing she can do to sway me, and I think my last conversation with her made her realize that. I didn't wish to tell my brother's girlfriend, but she called me up on Saturday about my Reddit post. She saw it, read it on an online video, and then realized it might be me with the way I described my brother and grandmother. So yeah, now she knows. She ended up tearing my brother a new asshole, and he still tried to justify himself to her. That's when she told me they were through and cut all contact with him. My brother, of course, blamed me, even though his girlfriend said that she's been ready to leave him for a while now. And if he tried to propose, no matter where, she'd have told him no. So that's it. My brother showed up at my place one more time to have a fit and said he's boycotting my wedding. He actually thought he had leverage that he and Grandma won't go. I said I wouldn't miss him and that he's in his 30s now and needs to grow up. Our parents have cut the umbilical cord and are no longer supporting him, and they're already repainting his room to rent it to someone else. And they plan on renting out my old bedroom as well because they need the money after the financial hole he left them in after dropping out of college, just to mooch off them for a while and then get a degree with online college later, and then barely pay rent while also making them pay for his food and utilities, despite having a good-paying job. They spent the world on him, and he wasn't the least bit grateful. That made my brother just shut down and leave. And since then, we've not heard a peep out of him. That's everything that's happened. So, am I the jerk? OP, you are definitely not the jerk for saying no to your brother proposing at your wedding. It's your day, not theirs, and you shouldn't feel pressured to share it with their proposal. Your brother and parents were out of line trying to push you into letting them do it. You have every right to say no and make your wedding about you and your fiancé. Don't let them guilt you into anything you don't want to do. Anyways, if you've enjoyed these stories, check out the video on the left where a Karen claims she's the owner of OP's truck and demands it back. Or the video on the right where Karen makes her kids steal OP's tablet and destroys it when caught.